everyone, and welcome to Meet the Experts. I'm Dory Sukup, and today I have a very special HR expert guest, Natalie Ivy. She is a two-time author. You can find her books, which, by the way, we should have in the link on Amazon. So today's topic is all about how to establish a great HR foundation and a positive team culture for your medical spa. So Natalie and I actually connected at our yacht club. We're both members there. And we started talking one day about our expertise. And before we knew it, she's telling me about all these great things that she does with many companies around the globe, because she is a global speaker, an author, an HR expert, an MBA. So you name it. She has so many initials behind her name. I am so happy to have her here with us and share her expertise today. But as we started our conversation, we realized that she could add a great value to our community. So I decided, why not sit down, come up with an entire HR program, which we're going to be talking to you a little bit about it today, and see how you can help members of our community. Because as a consulting firm, we're continually getting phone calls from clients like yours and members like you about how to deal with certain HR situations. So today, those of you who are with us live, feel free to enter your questions in the chat. And we also put a link in the chat to show you the 12-module program that we actually came up with for you to help you with all your HR needs. As a matter of fact, for today's purpose, what we've done is we took a question from each one of these 12 modules that Natalie will be hosting for you during the year, and you'll be able to gain insight on how to handle all different HR issues that you might be having. So I'm super excited that you're with us, Natalie. I'm so glad you took the time to really invest into helping our community and the whole medical spa community. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I am really, really pleased to be here. And so let's go ahead and roll. Let's get into some questions, and certainly happy to take some questions toward the end.
So one thing our clients, especially when somebody first starts working with us, is they really don't have anything set up as far as HR department is concerned. Sure. Like we provide them with position descriptions, manual, like an employee manual, but that's really about it.
Yeah.
So they don't really realize how important that is. So can we start with the department structure and why that's so important for any business, really?
Yes, absolutely. And in my experience, I've been in business and consulting for 22 years. And one of the common themes that we see in business is that business owners get into business because you're an expert in your field, right? But you're not necessarily an expert in this people stuff. So one of the things I really want to recommend is starting out with having that solid employee handbook, policies and procedures. And I like to say that those kinds of policies and procedures and HR infrastructure is a bit like a train track. Mm-hmm. Imagine if your business is the train. You have a destination with where you want to go, your service delivery, your profitability, right? You definitely are into business because you want to grow that revenue and bottom line. In order to get there, you need the people structure to do it. So imagine if you are working with that train, but you have tracks that are a bit wobbly, or you have tracks that you haven't quite built yet. Mm-hmm. That's where kind of the train goes off the tracks, and that leads to potential regulatory fines, penalties, and unfortunately employee turnover, and can lead to some very expensive litigation. Mm-hmm. All right, so it's critical.
I think they just think they can open up a medical spa, buy the lasers, get the software system, but the most important part is exactly what we're talking about, is the people.
The people part, right.
And it's funny that you called it the people thing. But the people thing can really get out of hand real quickly.
Yes, it can.
And I want to tell you a little bit about what some of our clients are faced with the people. There's a big shift in our industry now where many people are hired on. And because of the nature of the medical spa industry is you build up these relationships with the clients that are coming in. And then all of a sudden, one day they decide, well, you know what? I'm bringing in $1 million worth of revenue. Maybe I'll just go hang up my shingle someplace. And that's becoming a major issue in our industry. So I think protecting oneself and protecting one's business, I don't know if you come across that in other industries or not, but this is something that I think every owner needs to be aware of and put certain measures in place to avoid that from happening.
Yes.
Can you share either stories or some strategies that can help them?
Very much so. And one of the first things is from the beginning of the relationship is cultivating that with the team that you have and making it such a great place for them to be there that they won't have to make that decision to go elsewhere. I think becoming an employer of choice is part of it. But I also think having a very, very strong non-compete. And luckily we recently had a legal case that really struck it down. We thought perhaps that we were going to lose as business owners some of the leverage in protecting ourselves, and luckily that was overturned. So I really think that that's important. But also those individuals that really think that if they are bringing in $1 million plus and they want to go out and start their own, that may sound like a good idea at the time, but then all of the things we've just talking about, all the people thing and the infrastructure that you need, yes, you might be very good at injectables, but do you really know how to run a business?
Exactly.
You could run it into the ground in about 5 minutes.
Yes.
But I think the protection really starts with the relationship and non-compete.
And you know, some people always tell us, oh, the non-compete don't work. What's your opinion on that?
They do work, and they are enforceable. Definitely you want legal counsel to review them, and you need to ensure that it's not so rigid to the point where it could be challenged. But I think if you have good legal counsel to review it and figure out different scenarios that may have happened in the past with other Medspa owners, and then have your legal counsel address the non-compete to close the loop on any of those. Yes.
Great. Now, what I know in the state of Florida, I don't know about everywhere, but for a short brief of time recently, they actually did away with the non-compete, and then it actually came back.
Yes.
So I just want everybody to know that if you heard what happened, that's not the case. They did bring it back.
Yes, and so luckily now we have non-competes, but the kind of the detail in the non-compete, and that's where your legal counsel has to sit down with a Medspa owner and really make sure you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's and thinking about likely scenarios, particularly around geography and someone setting up another Medspa business, taking some images or brand collateral, and then taking that across town. You have to have definite protections in place for that.
And the other thing I would advise you to put on in there is the social media policy. That's another big can of worms in our industry, because many people don't have the proper structure on how to document the before and after, and they let all their providers take their own phone, take their own pictures. It's a nightmare, actually. This is one of the main problems we're faced with often. So what can they do? Or what social media policies do you recommend they do to stop them? Because that's really stealing.
Yes.
Especially if they leave, all of a sudden you have all these clients who were your clients, and now they're making them pass as their clients.
Right.
And it's a big issue.
Sure. So there's a bit of fraud that goes on. The other thing is also invasion of people's privacy and posting things that someone perhaps didn't want to have on social media. And also when, often than not, you have disgruntled employees who leave and then they say a lot of really bad things about your business. And so having a good social media policy that very much explains step by step, and then covering that in orientation on day one, setting those clear expectations. And with that said, though, you also have to look at the flip side. One of the things that a lot of business owners do not understand is that they have to comply with the National Labor Relations Act. And under that law, Section 7 allows for employees to engage in what is called concerted activity. That means, though, if you had an employee who, let's say, was out on social media grousing about the fact that she wasn't paid the commission that she was expecting, and you're really unhappy about it and you wanted to let that employee go. The problem is complaining about pay and other terms and conditions of employment, they're allowed to speak about that. So having a really well-written social media policy that protects you, your brand, your clients, but at the same time isn't stepping in legal potholes is what you need.
Yes.
These are things we're going to be covering in the HR Essentials curriculum.
Yeah. So these modules that Natalie so kindly agreed to do for all of you, I'm super excited. And really today we're barely scratching the surface, but if you go to inspirationmanagement.com /HR, you'll see all the modules that she will be hosting for you and going over literally step by step how to protect your business, stay out of trouble, and build that great team culture to where people want to stay with you, have great employee retention, therefore you can have great client retention and you can elevate your success. So this is really one topic, and that's why I'm so excited about doing this, Natalie, with you, or you doing it for us, is that it is so needed, and there's really hardly anybody really focused on teaching these essentials.
Yes, it's very true. I see it in my business, and we work not just with healthcare, but we work really across all industry sectors, and there are a lot of things that are pretty similar themes, and what you just hit on was a social media thing. I think there's probably not one industry sector that hasn't talked with me about the social media thing.
I'm sure.
Yeah, very much so. So we definitely need to address that.
So how can you avoid some of, like, we teach how to recruit, hire, train, all that. That's our specialty. But how can you avoid, like with some HR tools that you teach, how can you avoid these big mistakes that people sometimes make right from the get-go?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, as a business owner, admit that there are things that you just don't know, right? That's one of the first things. And you may really be very talented at establishing your brand and your marketing and all of those things. But I find that a lot of business owners really do not understand how to manage people, and not understanding that you need a bit of training, and often why people struggle with things. Think about if you are cooking in the kitchen and you've never made a cheesecake before and it didn't really turn out very well. Well, did you follow the recipe?
Yeah.
Right? If you didn't, it's going to fall apart, or it's going to crack. But the better that you get at it, and if you had someone who trained you how to do it, you would be better at it. Right? So I think admitting that and recognizing that some education needs to take place on, what are some of those do's and don'ts? What are the things that I need to be doing differently and better in the way that I'm leading my employees?
Right. Setting them up right from the beginning.
Yes.
So one of the bonuses we're giving you for signing up for these 12 modules is the Employee Orientation Manual and Employee Manual. So you can take it and customize it. Now, you should really take it and then talk with someone like Natalie to make sure that it's foolproof to you, to your business, and that way you're avoiding costly mistakes from the get-go, from the hiring process.
Right.
I think that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What else can a person do besides that education on how to attract talent, and what can they do maybe in the interview process or even the onboarding process that can avoid some of these mistakes?
Yeah, so one of the first things about hiring people is you have to really think about what differentiates your med spa from others. First of all, if you are an employer of choice where people want to come to you, just like if I were a client and I came into your med spa, you're my med spa of choice because there are certain things that you provide to me. The same thing applies when you have candidates who are coming to apply for a position with you. What differentiates you from down the road? And that's one way to, first of all, attract them. And what do you have going on that is that sort of differentiator? Just like from your marketing strategy, what are services that you provide that differentiate you from your competition? I think the other aspect is also a culture of accountability. I can tell you that in my experience, a lot of young people, even my own son, left a place of employment because the business wasn't holding people accountable. So if you think about what's going to help you to even retain employees, is starting right from the beginning with your values and having an organizational culture that focuses on accountability, right? And well, why do you think some employees leave? They grow weary if a person is continuing to not fulfill expectations, and it keeps happening over and over and over again. The good employees, after a while, kind of wonder, wow, I'm over here doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm not even being rewarded, but over here this person's sort of getting away with murder. Right? So I think establishing some of that framework is important.
Yeah. Well, that's a good lead into the evaluations and writing people up and when to terminate someone. Can we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, so performance management is probably the biggest struggle that I see that business owners have. And it really boils down to conflict management and avoidance. Right, and I want to share something. My mother was a registered nurse for 42 years, and one of the sayings that my mother had is the best way through trouble is right down the middle, and she used to do this with her nose. And what she meant by that is that when you skirt the issue and you don't address employee behavioral issues, well, that's going to start showing up in service delivery and in your client metrics. If you are not addressing performance issues, such as an employee that's making mistakes, billing mistakes, or employees making mistakes in the way that they're even marking product for sale, those are things that are costly, right? So what you have to do is, first of all, overcome the challenge of avoiding the conflict and procrastinating. It isn't going to get any better. And then having a structure, and one of the things that we're going to be talking about in the program is creating an environment to give course correction feedback with employees. And what does the environment need to look like when you're sitting down with them, and how do you prepare for it? And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about getting better at training. Like if you want to learn how to bake a cheesecake, you have to go through a little bit of learning and work the recipe. So a lot of what we're going to be learning is a bit of the recipes for how-to skills to sit down with employees. But you have to have crucial conversations, and you also have to memorialize those. Documentation.
So Natalie, I think the problem most of our clients have is because they come from a place of care. They're all medical professionals. So naturally, they don't like confrontation.
Of course.
They're very giving. They're very nurturing, exactly.
Yes.
So they avoid these things, and then they keep sliding them under the rug until they can't take it anymore, and then things go, crazy.
Yeah.
So do you work with professionals on that? Like, how can you learn to have these difficult conversations and hit them, like you said, your mom, straight on?
Sure. Well, one of the things is gathering your facts and your stats. And when you are fact-based, to sit down and have a conversation with an employee, that's where a lot of times it goes sideways, where there haven't been necessarily dates, times, and details. I'm really an advocate for that, and especially being a private investigator. The dates, times, and details in a timeline to substantiate employee misconduct is critical. So if you gather facts, you gather the stats, you have your dates, times, and details on exactly what's been happening with an employee. When you have that prepared, then it's a matter of, okay, a deep breath, and then envision what the conversation is going to look like. And then there is also a framework that I will be teaching called the feedback formula, so you can prepare for the conversation. But the other thing too, do a dress rehearsal.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're for.
Yeah,
they can
do
call
a dress
us,
rehearsal.
Get one of the coaches to
one of the coaches could roll through it with you, and that's kind of learning how to follow that recipe. And that is what builds confidence. Look, when you become competent at what you're preparing to do and you do more of those, your competence builds your confidence. And then when you keep doing that and you're confidently doing it, then you'll stop the procrastination.
Well, you're working on your leadership skills.
Of course.
And that's one thing.
Very much
you know, everybody goes to medical school, they teach you everything about medical, but they don't really sit down and teach you leadership skills, business skills, HR skills. Like none of these things are taught. And that's why I'm so excited about this. But as far as going back to your facts and your stats, I actually love that. Facts and stats. And I think that's one major problem is they don't document. So what would be an easy way to like document? Like, let's say something happened. What's a quick little method that you can share with us?
Use your phone. The first thing is, let's say you happen to walk into the reception area in the spa and you overheard the receptionist giving some incorrect information to a client that was trying to book. And you feel, oh, okay, that's a problem. And you've talked with your employee, let's say her name is Tabitha, and you've given her some correction. After that interaction, go back to your office, use your voice memo on an iPhone or whatever app you have, date, time, and talk with Tabitha about client so-and-so, and now you've memorialized it. And as you do that, then you could create on your desktop just a simple folder for each one of your direct reports, and then you just do a download. And now you have your dates, times, and details in chronological order.
That's great.
There you go.
So quick and easy.
That's it.
See, you have no excuse anymore. You all can do this.
You have the tools
because
at your
that is
fingertips.
the biggest problem I see over and over is lack of documentation. Because if they do have some kind of a report or a violation, or they go report you, then you have a leg to stand on. So can you share with us some of the incidents that people, like popular employee things that you come across when you're doing all your investigations?
Sure, yeah. Probably one of the biggest ones is harassment. Harassment today, and particularly businesses that have more than 15 employees, you have to comply with federal equal employment opportunity laws like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and others. But then some of you may have state statutes where you could have as few as 5 employees, and you have certain civil rights laws that you have to contend with. But harassment, and of course everyone hears the word harassment, they instantly think sexual harassment.
Yes.
But harassment takes on many different forms. It could be harassment based on religion or other protected characteristics such as race. And often what we see is when employees are being held accountable, perhaps if you do go back to that receptionist, her name is Tabitha, and you go do a little course correction feedback, sometimes then they want to allege that that's harassment, right? So sometimes accountability in an employee's mind equals harassment. That is not the case, but that's one of the biggest problems that we see. And in order to minimize the risk of that becoming a little more complex for you is the documentation that I just talked about, those dates, times, and details.
Yeah, very good. And you know, all these things can really be avoided with evaluations, which
Yes.
again, a lot of people don't take the time to really do.
Right.
So in your opinion, how important is that, and how often should they be doing them?
Yeah. Great
And
question.
how do you, again, document these things?
Yes. So performance evaluations, my methodology is first of all to give people a blank copy of that right when they begin. That way they're very clear on what are the competencies that we want you to demonstrate here. What are the specific goals and objectives? What are our desired goals for, let's say, our client care? Cover that right on day one. That way it's not a surprise. And then I would say at least on maybe a quarterly basis, you're working toward maybe an annual review. If you tie in your compensation with raises or bonuses at an annual basis, then I would say deliver the annual review. But the annual review should not be a surprise. And if you are doing your job, the delivery of that should be pretty easy. So
Yeah.
throughout the year.
So actually, we even do it a little more often because the nature of our business. And once you establish these KPIs, because the employees in a med spa really drive revenue. So you have to watch it on monthly basis, because if you don't, then you don't know whether that person is really doing a good job or not. What are you required by law to document as far as reprimands, oral, written? What are the laws as far as that's concerned?
So first of all, what you want to do, starting with even a job application, is you need to keep those on for 180 days. And the reason, and any interview notes that you have, you definitely want to retain those for at least 180 days after the date of that selection. The reason is that a person has 180 days to file if there is a charge of discrimination or harassment. But do keep in mind that some states, I might recommend to you that you keep it for at least 300 days, because there's a time frame that could be extended. There is no law, if you will, that requires an employer to document, but it becomes your affirmative defense later. So documenting those dates, times, and details of how you've had course correction feedback with an employee, whether it's a behavioral issue, such as being rude to a client, or could be a performance issue, such as making mistakes. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah. Maybe we can take a little break and take maybe some questions from the people that are with us. And also, I just want to remind everybody to go to inspirationmanagement.com/HR. There you're going to see actually all these modules that we have prepared for you. You're going to see 12 different modules where Natalie is going to be diving in detail in each module to truly help you set up a great HR department. So again, that URL is inspirationmanagement.com/HR. HR, and we're giving a special bonus for you. We're giving you the employee and orientation manual, which normally sells for $799. So it's going to be yours totally free. So you're almost getting these modules almost for free. So I would definitely go check it out and sign up for it. So go ahead. We have lovely Brooke with us here. She's one of our coaches here at Inspiration Management, MD Business Advisor. So she has some questions from our audience. I wanted to take a poll too, Brooke. I don't know if people answered. I would love to know how many people with us actually have teams, and then how many each person has on their team, just to give us an idea of who's with us today.
So we've got lots of people joining in on social media and Zoom saying hello.
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 And we do have a question. Vera, who says, Dory, thank you so much for doing this much needed program, but I do need to revamp my compensation model right now. What do you recommend?
So I actually have a question for you. Let's
Sure.
say you bring somebody on. Can you change compensation models in the
Sure.
middle of employment without getting in trouble?
Yes, you can, as long as you haven't established a very specific agreement. If you had an employment agreement with that person that within a set period of time, let's say 6 months, and you tried to change it in the middle of that could be a breach of contract.
So as long as you set a date.
Yes.
Yeah. So we can definitely help you with the compensation model, because again, that is actually key component of HR is setting up a compensation model that makes sense. So all you have to do is give us a call. I don't know, I'm not sure if you're a member or not. If you're a member, you can just call our office, and one of our coaches can sit down with you and go over the volume per guest compensation model that we teach. And if you're not a member, you can always purchase a coaching call and coach the VPG and purchase the VPG model from the shop, and then we can help you set it up. But definitely, that's a key area that we truly help people with, because they don't know how to hire. That's another thing. They have no idea how to pay people in a way that's performance-based and rewarding with benefits and different things that they could really offer.
Certainly, yeah. Well, one of the things that I remember Brian Tracy saying, and Brian Tracy is a marvelous author, and he wrote The Psychology of Achievement, and he said, people perform as they are measured and rewarded. That is very true. So if you think about that as a business owner, you really have to have proper measurements in place, so your metrics, and then you have to reward people for accomplishing those metrics.
Yeah.
But then there also has to be accountability if they're not.
Exactly.
And that's part of that managing the conflict and the performance stuff we talked about, doing course correction feedback in order to drive those results.
Yeah, and that's an area that definitely they need more assistance with. And that's one thing my team and I are constantly working on, is measuring and then improving.
Yes, very much so.
So
You got to have the metrics.
for sure.
And we have Sophie, who is asking, what is the best way to hire someone and what HR tools do I need?
Yeah, the best way to hire someone and HR tools. Yeah. So the first thing is, when you're thinking about the position, I think you first have to look at back to basics, which is called job design. You can create a job description, and a job description is wonderful. That's all of the essential functions of what you want someone to do. You know, whether it's an esthetician or it's the NP in your practice, whatever that may be. But what you have to do is look at the design of that job. Does it make sense? Are you asking this person to do more than what one human could physically do in one work week? All right, are they wearing so many different hats that it doesn't make sense?
That's a major problem, by
That's
the way.
a huge problem. I see it not just in this particular industry, but across
Everywhere,
the board. Yeah. So you need to get back to basics with a really, what I call a clean job design, where you've carved out the role, the responsibility, the authority, the autonomy in that particular role. And then you also have to get realistic regarding what you should pay that person. And I'm a big fan of variable compensation. I know you have your VPG and other metrics. Yes, base comp is great, but you've got to have that variable comp. And it also can't be too complicated that you have to be,
Genius to figure it out.
statistician to figure out the darn thing. The more transparent you are, the better off it's going to be.
Yeah.
But I think the other piece of that is you need to be looking for behavioral competencies and also how much of a cultural and functional fit. As an example, accountability is really kind of one of the strong values in my company, and so I imagine a lot of you it's a strong value as well. Well, you need to be asking questions in the interview. And as far as a tool, you need to have some standardized questions based on different competencies, and you need to be evaluating that. And the other thing that I also really can say as an HR tool is build case studies that are realistic. So think about if perhaps you're hiring in for a position that you've turned over someone. All right, or maybe 2 or 3, hopefully not, but let's say you really had a scenario that wasn't very positive with one of your clients, and you really want to avoid that happening again. Build a case study around that and then present that to candidates. Think about their critical thinking skills, how to assess that. Also, if you need to evaluate writing skills, put them in front of a laptop. Let them pretend that they're going to be corresponding with the client if that's necessary. But case studies, real life scenarios, put them on the spot to see how well they will respond. And then use a bit of a scoring rubric, and that way you're comparing your candidates apples to apples.
Nice. So we teach what we call past behavior predicts future behavior.
Absolutely.
So it's exactly what
Targeted selection.
That's what really we're talking about here, you guys. And that's probably one of the biggest problems I see is how quickly people hire someone. They're like, okay, I need somebody. Let me see.
Right.
Do they have a pulse? Yes. Okay, you're hired.
We call it fog on mirror principle. If they fog on the mirror and you're breathing, then we will hire you, and that's a bad strategy.
That's a very bad strategy. So don't do it.
No, don't do that, because later on you're going to spend a lot more time and energy and resources in trying to really unravel the poor performance with that employee. You're better off spending time on the front side and then also really implementing a sound orientation and onboarding strategy.
Yeah. I think the main thing is they're not always recruiting. They wait until they need somebody before they start looking for somebody, and that's too late. And then I also love to hire people who are already working rather than somebody looking for work.
Right.
So all these things end up becoming great assets for them, that they're being proactive in building a nice team and great positive culture within the company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing too is business owners, you don't have to do everything yourself. I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes as well.
Yeah.
There are plenty of resources, and certainly if there are questions that you have, you know where to find us, and we can certainly point you in the right direction with some resources that can help you if you need to supplement the hiring, where you just don't have the resources to drop what you're doing to go do that.
Yes. So what do you see works effectively? One of the biggest problems they have with some employees is no-shows. And especially in this industry, you have an appointment book that's full. All of a sudden, the person doesn't show up to work. Now you have to scramble to get somebody. So what are some of the things that are effective to address absenteeism?
Yeah, so it starts again with day one. I'm a really big fan of setting expectations for performance right from the very beginning and talking about what that means and helping your new hire to understand how that feels. You know, a lot of times when you approach training a new person, you're looking at it through your lens and what the impact is to you. The new hire doesn't really feel the impact. They don't feel the impact to your brand or a bad reputation. They don't feel any of that. All they know is it's all about them, and they wanted to take that day off to go shoe shopping. Okay, that's all they care about. All right, but you have to help them understand. Imagine if you were kind of stood up. If you had an appointment, even if at your own doctor's office, you took the day off from work so that you could go, and now that person didn't show up. How does that feel? You have to really kind of help them to understand the impact on the business from the client's perspective and your perspective. So I think talking about that day one. I think the other thing too is creating very robust attendance policies. You know, I've been around long enough to remember before we had phones like we do now. You had to call the boss if you weren't coming in to work. You had to physically pick up the phone and call. So I can tell you we're starting to go a little more old school with policies today, not allowing people to say, dude, not coming in today.
Actually, I forbid that. Like, you should not be texting.
No, you don't
need
text
to call in.
Right, you can create an attendance policy, and I did it with one organization, and in 1 year they dropped their unscheduled absenteeism 38%.
Wow.
So imagine what that could look like to your appointment book, that you're not having to shuffle. So
it's too easy to text.
It is. So don't make it as easy for people to call off. But also hold people accountable. If you continue to say, okay, well, you know, Tabitha, you just really need to be here, and we just really need you here. And then it's chance after chance after chance.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about
teeth.
terminations.
Sure.
And what are some of the guidelines that you teach to protect themselves again? When can you let somebody go, and maybe
Sure.
when should you not?
Okay, great. So one of the things that I'm often presented with when I talk about having to do documentation before letting people go, business owners say, well, Natalie, I don't have to do that. Well, they're an at-will employee. Okay, I understand that, but at-will is basically a legal theory from the late 1800s, which means there's no employment contract. However, if there possibly is any evidence that the employee was treated unfairly, you could have a wrongful termination suit. You can also have claims of retaliation. You could have violation of federal or state laws. So in my opinion, you don't want to go the at-will route. Very extreme circumstances. Documentation. What you want to do is really sit back and assess, how many warnings have I given this employee? And if in your heart of hearts you have done your level best to help this employee and it's just not turning around, then now is the time that you need to be prepared to part company. So prepare for it, have your termination document ready, have another management level witness, and I recommend not doing it in your office where you might be distracted. Choose a conference room or a private space, and it's also not a conversation.
Exactly. Actually, that's the key.
It's not a conversation.
You should not open up
No.
what happened before and this and that.
It is laying out the facts specifically that led up to this point, and then at this point you're separating them from employment. And then if you've had a benefit plan, you just give them a letter that explains if they need to stay on COBRA with your plan, and that's kind of about it. But also having a termination checklist to ensure that you're collecting items that they may still have, such as keys or ID badges or parking pass or other things, uniforms and so on.
Yeah, very important.
Sure.
See, you're talking about, you know, your music to my ears, because you're talking about system structure, organization, just having your HR kit, if you will. We probably should provide them with that, by the way. We need to create a whole kit that here's what you need when you hire, here's what you need when you terminate, here's what you need when you evaluate. All these tools. And if you're nicely organized and you have everything right there, then you're really building a great positive culture, because then people know, and they like it when they know. They don't like, employees don't like it when it's the wild, wild west.
No, they don't. And that's how you lose good, talented employees. Yes, because they will walk away if, again, they don't see the accountability, or if there's just no structure or unfairness. I think probably favoritism is one of the things that comes up so often. Supervisors get promoted from within, and they really don't recognize that some of their actions maybe are really giving favor to one employee over the other. And then that just, you know, starts creating a lot of kind of backbiting, you know, the talking about one another, passive aggressive behaviors, and unfortunately those undertones also can show up in your service delivery. Clients will feel that. They'll feel the energy in your business. And so you have to get this piece right.
Yeah. So smart. Don't you guys love her? Oh my gosh. I'm ready to sign up for this course. Yes, Brooke.
We have a lot of clients that are interested in the kit that you guys are talking about.
Yes.
So seems to be a hit. We do have a newer member, Anna, who's asking, can you make employees sit and watch the modules on MBU? Do I have to pay them? Is it the same pay rate?
Oh, that's a great question. So about training, I get that question all the time.
Yes.
Should I pay employees for training?
Yes. So difference is your exempt employees and your non-exempt employees. Exempt employees are those that you are paying a salary. They get a guaranteed salary every week. They're going to be your managerial level employees typically. Those employees, you give them, that's a performance directive. You know, you're paying them regardless. So let's set that aside. The non-exempt employees, who are typically going to be your hourly employees, you are going to have to pay them. And and even if they are working remotely, let's say they're off on a Friday and you're asking them to watch 2-3 modules, they're going to have to submit their time for that. That's, if you were to require that, that is called off the clock work, and that can lead to a visit from the Department of Labor.
So we had an attorney on Meet the Expert one time before, and she was discussing productive pay versus non-productive. So like when you're with clients, this is your hourly rate, but maybe they have a training rate.
Oh, sure.
Have you seen that
Yes.
and is that something that they can do?
Yes, you can. The one thing that I think is very important, though, is when you have multiple rates of pay. If, let's say, you had a super busy week, and then we're coming up in fourth quarter, holiday time, a lot of people are going in for services, but just make sure that you are combining the rates and you are computing overtime properly. All right, so
So as long as, again, you put it in your employee manual or with your position offer, as long as they understand that, then, because
Right.
the problem is many of these folks are like, could be making $50, $75, $100 an hour. So to have somebody sit there and do that,
Of course.
it's
Yes.
very expensive.
I can tell you I do it in my own business. When we have a direct client project, it's one rate, but when we're on just a team Zoom call, that's another rate. You
Yeah.
can absolutely do it, and you can have multiple rates of pay.
Yeah.
But just for the non-exempt hourlies, you just have to ensure that you are computing that properly with each of the rates of pay.
Great. What other questions do you have, Brooke?
Yes. So we have Beatrice asking, I don't have an employee manual. Is it really necessary to have one?
Yes.
Yes, and I'll give you a perfect example of my attorney that I work with, Sean. He and I've been buddies for 25 years. Sean said your employment handbook is a bit like pouring a concrete foundation for your dream house. And he said, imagine for a moment you bought a plot of land and you want to build your dream house. You're going to check on it, and you poured the concrete, but there's a big crack in it. And you say, don't worry about it. Let's just build the house on top of it. How strong do you think your house will be later? It's going to start to fall apart because of that lack of a solid foundation. So your employee handbook is like that concrete foundation. That is that building block on everything else that you're going to do. All of your managerial decision making comes from those policies in that manual.
So yes, you need it. And
Yes.
when you sign up for all these modules Natalie's going to be doing for you, you're going to get one totally free. Our employee manual was written by a Florida attorney. So all you have to do is take it and customize it a little bit, and it's yours. And then the orientation manual in this also is amazing because it goes over all the different guidelines that you have within your business that you need to share with your team. Again, this normally sells for $799. It's going to be totally yours for free by signing up for the modules that Natalie will be hosting, all about HR essentials.
I have another question here from Lisa, who's expanding her team right now. So she's wondering the difference between a W-2 and a 1099 employee, and what's the benefit?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest mistakes we see because they end up hiring independent contractors and treat them like employees.
Right.
So you're going to love this answer. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, a 1099 contractor is, it's kind of like if you're going to have a contractor to come build a deck on your house. You're going to give them what it is that you want in terms of a deck, but the contractor comes in, uses their expertise to build it, and then they leave. That's really the way the relationship should be when you're with a contractor. But what I typically see is we label someone on a 1099 as a contractor, but they're in a uniform, they're attending regular team meetings, they have an email, and they're really part of the DNA of
They
your
have a
organization.
schedule.
And they have a schedule. That is not the way that works. And I can tell you that that is a very expensive endeavor to correct, because not only are you going to have your back overtime wages, but you also haven't been paying in for unemployment compensation at federal rate and state rate. I will tell you that it turns into a hot mess. You need to get your classification properly, and the IRS, you could just Google it, has some very specific rules regarding who can be a contractor, and I strongly advise you to follow that to the letter and don't skirt it. So it's a very expensive proposition to fix it, because you have to leverage accountants and attorneys to help you to unravel that mess.
Actually, a little while ago, I had one client that actually was doing that. She called us up after she was already in trouble, and we had to help her find an attorney and get out. She ended up having to pay back taxes for over a year for some employees.
I'm sure.
Like it broke her. It was a bad mistake. So you have to really be careful. And by the way, that's going to be one module that we're going to be talking about how to classify each one of the employees and all the legalities that go with each one of the classifications.
Yeah, Module 6, we're going to cover that.
So it'll be very important for you. Yes, Brooke?
We have another client asking, Kay, what can I do to protect my client information when my team has access to the database?
Oh, that's another big thing.
Yeah, so, well, one of the things that you have to have in your handbook is certainly code of conduct. And if you had a team member who is accessing the database, well, how do you know that? What does your system tell you? Do you have any kind of what is called watermarking controls where you could see who actually touched a record? You can create hierarchies within your system. But if you did do an audit periodically and someone was touching a certain record that they shouldn't be, that should be very much a stern disciplinary warning. If not a separation of employment, if they weren't allowed to touch that part
Or
of the record.
downloading, like
Right.
being able.
Or
so,
taking
Yeah.
that information, that should be completely prohibited.
and another thing that we are totally against when we teach people in our educational programs is not to allow team members to use their own personal phones to text back and forth with clients, because
Right.
again, that's how they gather their information.
Right.
And before you know it, they have an entire list of the clients that really
Right.
belong to the Medspa, and now they have them all on their phone.
Right.
So any communication is what we teach. Any communication between a provider and a client should really be done through the business and not through personal people.
Right.
That could really be a big, big can of worms.
Sure, and it would be worth it. Spend the money for additional company-owned phones. It's just they're not terribly expensive. Just issue certain team members a company-owned phone, and quite frankly, also from an investigative standpoint, you really don't have any access to anything that's on the personal devices.
Yeah.
That employee who is using their own personal phone and corresponding with the client, you have no access to that. They have no responsibility to turn that over to you. The only time you could is if it was subpoenaed. So you're really better off having company-owned units.
Yes.
A lot more control.
That's exactly what we teach. So are you listening? You better be. This is all great stuff to protect you and protect your business. That's why you need to go to inspirationmanagement.com/HR and take advantage of the great savings we're offering you today, plus this bonus that we are giving you. It'll be worth every penny. More questions, Brooke?
Yeah, we also dropped the link in the Zoom chat if you are joining us via Zoom, and I can put it on the Instagram as well. So we have John, who's also expanding his team, and he's wondering how important it is to have position descriptions and a job offer in writing.
No.
Yeah, position descriptions and the job offer in writing. Okay.
And I love the job design, actually, that you were also talking about. So you need to add that to it, too.
Very much so.
And one other thing we talk about is a career path, because nobody wants a dead-end job.
Of course.
So I think, again, it goes back to that HR kit. So what's inside that kit that I could use to encourage top talent to come and then show them the way?
Right. And also creating, different levels for positions as well. Even though you may not necessarily think that you have a lot of room for people to grow, you sure can. You can create tiers. You can create levels of expertise and certainly offering professional development. But, job descriptions are essential because what it's doing is it's clarifying that role, responsibility, authority, autonomy. What is someone... What are the essential functions that you are asking of them to perform in your business? But then, also when you have that job offer letter, you're putting it in writing so that there's no question what was the salary. There's no question regarding what the benefits were. No question regarding what the expected commission structure was, because it's in writing. And that becomes your defense if that is challenged at a later date. So yes, I'm a big fan of making sure that's in place.
Yeah. That's exactly what we've been talking about, is all the structure, the systems that need to be in place for you to protect yourself, your business, and then be able to attract those top talented people. Because put it this way, a high talented person is going to come to your place, and if they don't see a position description, guess what? They're not even interested in your company.
Yeah.
They're gonna quit before they even start.
Yeah, they want to know what is going to be expected
Exactly.
of me, and
And I love it when people interview me instead of me interviewing them. You know you have a good candidate on your hand because that's what you want.
Right. They're trying to make sure that they're going to be a fit with you.
Exactly.
Right. Love it.
Yeah. Very good.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that would be a nice thing. So we're doing something very special while Brooke is getting the other. So these are all the modules that Natalie will be going through. There's 12 of them. They're going to be about 45 minutes each with some questions if you join her live. Then we're going to take all these just like we record here, and just like many of you are members and have access to Medspa Biz University. So we're going to take these modules and put them on the university, so you'll have access to them for 1 whole year. So you'll be able to either join her live, or you can go to Medspa Biz University and watch them at your convenience. So the way we structured all the modules is to truly give you those essentials that we've been talking about. Almost every topic we discussed today will be addressed in more details, and you'll have a blueprint, if you will, of what your HR department should look like. So we're doing something very special for you. Again, I'm doing this because I truly believe that this is something that you need. I wouldn't be bringing Natalie here to you and giving her expertise if I didn't think this was really needed. We come across these situations, you guys, all the time, so we need to address them. So we're basically giving it away. Go ahead, Brooke. So the program for all 12 modules, the regular price will be $14.95. But for anybody who signs up early, like right now during the Meet the Expert interview and then next couple of days, we're going to offer it to you for only $9.99. And all you have to do again is go to inspirationmanagement.com/HR, and you'll be able to access or scan the QR code. So if you consider this is $7.99 and this is $9.99, so you're getting all modules for basically a couple $100. It's a no-brainer. So even if you're not the one that's going to be implementing this, you can always sign up and then you give it to your manager, so the manager can study and implement all these essentials that Natalie is going to be going over with you. So I highly encourage you go and sign up so you can protect your business and grow a great team that will stay with you for years to come. Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Yeah, we'll take a couple more questions.
Yes. So Natalie, who is a member with us, she said, thank you so much. This has been very informative. Question is, do we have access to the HR program on Medspa Biz University?
Yes. So if you're a member, we'll have to figure out what we can do for her. You're saying she's a member?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll probably do it in some way. I'll have to talk to Natalie about this and see, but I'll get back with her, actually to all members if they're with us, on how we're going to give access to actual members. So this is a non-member price right here.
Perfect. Awesome.
Great.
We do have another question from David, who has some employees and roles right now that he's looking to possibly change. So how does it look when you're changing an existing job description?
Yeah, excellent. That's a great question. What happens when you're changing roles? Well, I think the first thing you need to be clear on is the why you're changing, and explaining the why behind that when you're talking with an employee. Sometimes what you will get, though, is the pushback. Well, that's not what I signed up for. That's not what I started with. I understand that. Well, you know, if you think about it, when you started, we might have been using Windows 98, but we had to change. Okay, businesses have to evolve, and so, you know, you don't want to necessarily be snarky about it, but I think you have to just set the why behind it, and then talk about it as a development opportunity. And if you have some roles that are needing to evolve, maybe it's someone who has to step up with more supervisory capability, explain why, and why is it that you're selecting them for that role. If someone is having to take on some different tasks or maybe more tasks, again, explain why. But you also have to be prepared if those roles are changing. What is the compensation structure going to come along with it? Because if you're asking someone to do 25% more, and they're going to have the same exact compensation,
Right.
there's going to be a question mark there. So I think you really need to be thinking through, what is the role? How are you going to clarify the responsibilities? What is it that these additional duties, if you're adding some things on, how will you be able to compensate them accordingly for that?
Very important. Thank you.
Sure.
Actually, we had one question come in right before I came to join you, and it was about a doctor's pay, like when should they start paying themselves.
Yes.
So, that goes really to your entire budget when you first set up the budget, and you need to assign certain amount of money that's going to go to payroll, and you should always pay yourself. Like, I don't think you should open a business, go to work, and work for free. Can you hire anybody else for free?
No.
No. No. Like, how would you like it, Brooke, if I didn't pay you this month because we don't have enough money to pay her? Like, that doesn't work. You have to set up your budget in advance, and you should set up a way to pay yourself as the owner, the founder, the investor, the provider, whatever your role is. So yeah, everybody should get paid. But again, you have to have the money set up properly, your operational budget, to where you could do that. And if you can't, then you really need to go get financing so you can fund the business and be able to still pay yourself. So definitely that's something that you should do. I think that was from Dr. DeLoss. He emailed me before we started. So yeah. And, again, back to the compensation. That's such a deep topic.
Of course.
Maybe I'll join you as a guest in one of the modules, and
Sure.
we can dive into the compensation
that
a
would be
little bit
great.
more, because a lot of people wonder about that and see how they need to. So again, I want you to also go and get Natalie's book. Great books, you guys. And I'm a book junkie, so so the first one, I love it. I love the title, by the way. Of
Yes,
this
how
one.
to keep HR from being the employee complaint department.
I love it. Yeah, because you don't want it to just be a complaint department. And then this one looks like it has like a workbook with it, right?
Yeah,
Or
and it
no,
has
or is
end
it
of chapter quizzes. This is really
I love
designed a
it.
lot for what to do when you have employee misconduct, and you need to figure out what kind of questions to ask when you're questioning employees, whether it's theft or you
To
have
investigate.
and how do you investigate the misconduct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had one person call me last week. She has a medical spa, and she had just had a bunch of inventory come in, and they put it up, in the boutique. Well, she comes in the next morning, and this was like about closing time. So she comes in the next morning, and she notices the products that she just put in the night before were gone. So she's like, who could have been? Is it the cleaning people? Well, guess what? It was not the clean. She went to her cameras. That's why cameras are so important. So she went back to her cameras and started looking, and it was one of her estheticians that actually took the products. So she had to go through this whole ordeal of filing for theft.
Yeah.
And do you know what she did?
What did she do?
The employee went and filed for unemployment. Here you are, you get caught stealing, and then you go file for unemployment.
So, with a tip, gross misconduct should be in the termination letter, and then that will help you avoid the unemployment claim.
Gross.
Gross misconduct.
Misconduct. I love
Those
it.
are the words you need in your
Wow.
separation letter, and that will help you in winning the unemployment claim. Because when an employee loses their employment through no fault of their own, they're entitled to unemployment. But obviously, helping yourself to product
Yes.
was not.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, do we have any other comments or?
We do actually. Monica is saying she always brushes things under the rug and she does not like confrontation. Will you be covering that in the modules, how to have these conversations?
Yes, one of the things that we're going to be going through is the productive conflict. And I've been working with this particular behavioral instrument for many, many years. And particularly those individuals that are what are called steady styles, or the very conscientious styles. They tend to be a bit more introverted, the nurturing type, and that, of course, I'm sure is what attracts those individuals to med spas. But what you have to really recognize is kind of how you are hardwired with your communication style. And if you are always someone who is avoiding it, unfortunately, that avoidance is not good for business. You have to really learn how to overcome it. And so one of the things that we're really going to learn is how to manage conflict constructively instead of destructively. And a lot of people who have not handled conflict well in the past, it's kind of almost like you have PTSD from it, that you've handled conflict poorly in the past, so then you anticipate the next exchange with an employee that might be riddled with conflict is going to be equally as bad. It is not, right? That's sort of fuzzy logic. But if you do learn the skills on how to really navigate conflict more constructively, more productively, that will help you to build your confidence.
Nice.
Remember, competence is going to build confidence.
Yeah, very nice. Well said. So she needs to sign up for the modules.
Yes.
So we can really help her.
Absolutely.
So the other thing I want to offer you guys as bonuses, in case you don't have my books, so you can go to our website and get my latest, Medical Aesthetic Success, or if you don't have the How to Make Millions, that's still available, of course. And then if you don't know what you exactly need with your business, you can always set up a complimentary coaching session to where we can actually help you and set you on the right path to success. Do people, you have a consulting firm,
Sure.
obviously, to focus on HR.
Yes.
So if somebody has specific questions or they need maybe a one-on-one time with you, what
Yes.
would be the best way to
Sure.
reach out?
Yeah, they can just reach out. My email is natalie@rpchr.com, and you can just schedule time. My assistant Madison will get you on my calendar, and we can just have a chat and figure out what it is that you need.
Great. That's wonderful. And we'll put that in the follow-up email. This is going to be featured on YouTube. So you guys, if you didn't join us for the entire time, you can always go and watch it on demand. It'll be up there by tomorrow. More questions or?
We have a lot of people saying thank you. Very informative.
Great. Yes,
Terrific.
this was great. Thank you so much, Natalie,
Oh,
for
you're
being
so
with
welcome.
us. We are right at the hour. We appreciate your time and being with us, and I look forward to you really helping our community and
Oh, I do too.
making a big difference for
Yes.
all of you guys. So thank you so much
Absolutely.
for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out, and we can help you the best way we can. Until next time, stay inspired. Bye now.